Iran's supreme leader has vowed to carry out a harsh response after twin explosions in the country's south killed at least 95 people. The blasts happened near the grave of former top commander Qassem Soleimani. Mourners had gathered for a ceremony to mark 4 years since he was killed in a US drone strike. There's been no claim of responsibility yet for the explosions.
The aftermath of a blast that shook the city of Kerman in Iran's south, releasing shrapnel into the screaming crowd. Local media captured the moment people started running as they heard the first explosion go off. Another blast nearby followed some minutes later. Thousands were attending a ceremony honoring the prominent Iranian general, Qassem Soleimani, killed in a US strike in 2020. But the US says it had no role in this attack and that Israel didn't either.
It's too early, at least for us, to be able to say what might have caused it. But I do want to address some of the irresponsible claims that I have seen circulate and say that, number one, the United States was not involved in any way, and any suggestion to the contrary is ridiculous. And number two, we have no reason to believe that Israel was involved in this explosion.
It's believed to be the deadliest attack in Iran in over 40 years. There were reports of a stampede that injured several people as they tried to run away. The UN responded with calls for accountability.
The Secretary General strongly condemns the attack today on a memorial ceremony in Kerman City in the Islamic Republic of Iran, which reportedly killed more than 100 people and injured many more. The Secretary General calls for those responsible to be held accountable.
The regime in Tehran has labeled the explosions as a terrorist attack, while Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, vowed to retaliate, promising a harsh response.
For more on this, I'm joined now by Alex Vatanka, Iran expert at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Welcome to DW. So the United States has denied being responsible for these blasts. So who could have carried them out then?
Well, to be honest, it's too early to point the finger at any one group. What we have seen so far in terms of Iranian announcements, we've had the Iranian Minister of Interior making the claim that the US and Israel were involved, but then this is sort of almost generic. It's almost a knee-jerk reaction that you often hear from senior leaders, without providing the evidence. As I said, it's a political statement, not reflecting any kind of serious investigation. One thing I do note is that Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, in his statement reacting to the bombings, did not point a finger at either United States, Israel, or anybody else for that matter. And I think that is probably a reflection of fact that the Iranian authorities right now, A, do not know who's behind it, and B, they don't know what their next step ought to be.
All right, Alex, but they did say, the Iranian government did call it a terror attack, and they did vow to respond harshly. So what form might that response take then?
Well, I mean, obviously, we need to know who would have been behind it. It really would shape Iran's next steps. I mean, if it's if it's an external entity like, say, Israel, it requires a different sort of calculations on the part of Tehran than, say, domestic opponents of the regime. Look, these two bombings today happened in the province of Kerman, which is relatively in the southeast of the country, not far from the Iranian border with Pakistan. And the province of Baluchistan, which is next to Kerman province, is a region known for militancy, for organized crime, and at times even militant jihadist Sunni anti-regime operatives. Just 2 weeks ago, 11 Iranian officers were killed by a jihadist group. So there are actually entities inside of Iran's borders that could have been behind it. But again, I want to go back to what I said. It's really early. Iran has a long list of domestic opponents and external opponents. It could be domestic, it could be external, it could be a combination of both. We have to wait and see.
All right. Despite what you're saying there, this these attacks did happen at a memorial for Qassem Soleimani, who was assassinated by the US 4 years ago. So do you think there's much significance in where the attacks took place?
Oh, absolutely. But, Qassem Soleimani, as you point out, was assassinated by the Trump administration 4 years ago, but he had many enemies. He had enemies inside of Iran. He had enemies in the region, including, as we've discussed so far, the state of Israel, an enemy of Soleimani, a country that Soleimani vowed to eradicate from the face of the map. So, yes, there's a symbolism here, no doubt about it. But I think it's too early to sort of make the conclusion because of what's happening in Gaza and the timing. This is somehow linked to Iran's bigger regional plan. Qassem Soleimani was the architect of Iran's forward defense, supplying weapons and training to groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and so on. It might very well be that they are connected, but it could also be a case of opportunism by an Iranian opposition group, in this case, most likely the jihadists that operate in the southeast, that have decades-long track record of targeting Iranian officials. Again, I want to bore you, but we just don't know enough to be able to make conclusions yet.
Thanks for your insights, Alex. Alex Vatanka from the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.